Family, I want you to take a good look at the image that you see on your screen. This comes from the Harriet movie review by Variety. And it lets you know exactly the reason why this putrid media perversion exists. Joe Alwyn, who plays Harriet's most sadistic master, who grew up with her and has to suppress his love for her, a slave master who loves the woman that he brutalizes. Oh, he has to suppress his love for her. See, he really loves her, but he's got to suppress that. This is absolutely satanic. And the woman behind this, Cassie Lemons, she wrote and directed this crap at the behest of her white paymasters. She is somebody who I've seen some of her stuff before and didn't like it. She directed the movie Eve's Bayou with Samuel Jackson. And this is before I decided to wash my hands of Samuel Jackson. Basically, unless he's in the Avengers or some other big budget production where the set is the star or the special effects are the star, and basically you can switch out Terrence Howard for Don Cheadle and it doesn't really matter because that's not what anyone's paying to see. Unless it's something like that, I got no need for Samuel Jackson. But in Eve's Bayou, you could tell this was Cassie Lemon's putrid imagination hard at work. The father, played by Samuel Jackson, is just a panty waist, which is what Cassie Lemons thinks of black men. The children are being psychologically brutalized by the mother, and to Cassie Lemons, this is a powerful, tough, in-charge mother. She's the head of household. She's in charge, and everybody knows it. And the children are basically helpless in the clutches of this sadistic maternal figure. And the father, well, all he can do is just basically sit there like a sack of potatoes. Oh, by the way, they make sure to put in a little bit of incestuous overtones into the film as well. Because, when it comes to black men, you can never demonize them too much. And now Cassie Lemons has revealed what she really thinks. According to Shadow and Act, they point out that the movie decides that they're going to make the villain of the story not the slave masters, not the white supremacist slave owners. They're not the villains of the movie. It's a black man who's the movie, a slave catcher. By the way, this figure does not feature at all in the story of Harriet Tubman in real life. Historically, this individual, whatever this cardboard cutout is supposed to be, didn't actually exist. It's something that Cassie Lemons and this other co-writer on the movie decided to put in. It's not part of the historical record, but they decided to invent this to put in the movie. Now, who the hell were they trying to please with this stunt? And as if that wasn't enough, just in case they didn't make the point that this movie is clearly on the side of white supremacy, they make it where the slave master, the one who has to suppress his love for Harriet, he shoots the black bounty hunter in the head because the black bounty hunter was going to kill Harriet. He's about to kill Harriet, so the white man has to save Harriet Tubman. Now, what's more insulting? The fact that they try to present black men as being the villains of the piece. The big threat that Harriet Tubman had to face wasn't the white supremacists. It wasn't the white slave owners. It was black men. They were the big problem. They were the big threat to Harriet Tubman. Is that the worst thing, or the fact that they have it where Harriet Tubman is being saved by a slave owner? A slave owner is being presented as Harriet Tubman's savior. Oh, the person who's going to keep her safe. The person who kills in order to safeguard Harriet Tubman's life is the very slave owners who were brutalizing her in the first place. This is satanic. Trying to have it where both love and vicious satanic hate occupy the same space. That's sadistic. That's a form of mind control. That's how you keep somebody in a brutal relationship. That's like battered wives syndrome. You have it where love and hate occupy the same space. That's part of the reason why abused children have such a hard time separating themselves from their abusive parents. And the same thing goes for people in relationships where they're being abused. And this is what's going on. This movie bears no resemblance to the historical record at all. It's so divorced from Harriet Tubman, the real woman, that you wonder why the hell they did it at all. It's because of the fact that they needed a name to put on that. There was no way in the world that they were going to come up with some sort of fictional story. They weren't going to say, well, we'll just do a story about a black woman during slavery who breaks away and has a love affair with her slave master. No, they were like, no, we're going to say it's Harriet Tubman's story. Why? Because if they didn't, nobody would go to see this crap. That's the reason why they had to put Harriet Tubman's name on it, because nobody would see this garbage any other way. This is not the story of Harriet Tubman. This is some satanic slave play, and it lets you know what the hell goes on in Cassie Lemon's demented, sick, twisted, perverted mind. Cassie Lemons, who many in the family have pointed out that this woman is the child of immigrants. I'm so surprised. This is a woman who does not define herself, clearly doesn't define herself as being one of us. Her ancestry doesn't go back to the plantations of the American South. If she does have any of our folk in her family lineage, she damn sure is trying to separate herself from them. See, this is the problem with intersectionality in general. When you got some black feminist who shows up and she decides that I identify as a woman first, or I identify as biracial first, or I identify as one of the alphabet people first, or I identify as an immigrant first. Well, do you identify as black first? No, that'd be too divisive. Yeah, but they'll identify as everything else first. Family, when we sit on our hands and let them trash our icons, what we're telling them is that we are theirs for the taking. You got to stand up for your freaking ancestors because your ancestors stood up for you, especially people like Harriet Tubman who put it all on the line for us. We got to stand up for her. We got to call this garbage out. And anyone and everyone who's associated with this, they got to be somebody who we keep in mind for future reference. We do not forget something like this. We don't forgive it either. A movie like this is not a movie at all. It's a thinly veiled hit piece against black people. The entire point of this is to be some sort of twisted reimagining, this is supposed to be a retelling of history for the sake of providing rhetorical ammunition to our enemies. You'll have people out there who will try to say that, well, Harriet Tubman, her slave masters were actually very nice to her. They weren't so bad. Well, how do you know that? Did you actually read any of the biographies of Harriet Tubman? No. Did you actually read any accounts that Harriet Tubman herself gave? No. Then how do you know that her slave masters weren't so bad? Well, in the movie, they... Now, the people who will try to use the movie as a defense, they know that the movie is fiction. At the very least, they know that that's a very weak defense, but what they also know is that this is what the society, that the white media has given to them, so they'll try to run with it. Everybody who had anything to do with this, there is no defense for this. We told you this was garbage over a year ago. We told you that this was going to be every bit as evil, perverted, and corrupt as it's proven itself to be. Meanwhile, you had people, if I can dare to call them that, people like Agent Duvernay, who were cheerleading for this garbage. People like Agent Duvernay thought that it was cute to promote this movie and say, oh, there's this movie about Harriet Tubman. You can tell that Agent Duvernay, she didn't really know anything about the movie per se. She gave just the vaguest of endorsements for it. There is a movie on Harriet Tubman coming out this fall. It apparently covers the early part of her life. What a life. More like what a lie. Yeah, that's the kind of blind obedience to white supremacy that I would expect from a tool like Agent Duvernay. That's exactly the kind of blind, unquestioning obedience that I would expect white supremacy to have over a fool like her. So for all you fools out there who thought that Agent Duvernay was on the side of the angels because she made When They See Us, yeah, you better understand that Agent Duvernay is simply there to try to get you on board with the white supremacist agenda. She's going to sit there and say or put out a couple of images that are meant to bait you, to draw you in and go, oh, well, she's on to something, and then next thing you know, oh, and you need to go see this Harriet Tubman movie. I told you that this woman is a tool of white supremacy. And that this woman, she's just as bad as Cassie Lemons. In fact, far worse. So she comes up with a couple of half-baked documentaries, one about the 13th Amendment, the other one about the Central Park Five. She has absolutely nothing supportive to say about the New Voices of Black media. Have you seen her supporting or promoting any of the documentaries or the media pieces that come from the New Voices of Black media? Have you seen any of their names come out of her mouth? No. Agent DuVernay is a tool of white supremacy, and you better understand that before you go thinking that just because she made When They See Us, that somehow that means that she's on our side. She is not. Agent DuVernay is an operative for white supremacy. That's why I call her Agent DuVernay. She's only putting out this stuff as pro forma. And you better believe that as soon as you start telling her to really go in on white supremacy, she's going to be backing up 100 miles an hour. She has problems when she's not about to say anything that's going to help to push the real stuff that comes from the black media, but she will help Cassie Lemons get out there and promote the idea that Harriet Tubman was in some sort of dysfunctional love affair with her rapacious, brutal, satanic slave owner. She will help promote the idea that the slave owners, well, they really wanted to be nice to the black slaves, but you see, it was the times they lived in. You see, the slave owners, they were as much prisoners of their time as the black slaves were. That's that freaking white supremacist crap. The slaves lived lives of quiet dignity, and the slave owners, well, it's really overblown. You got good old boys and all sorts of white supremacist liars who will go online or in front of cameras and say, well, the idea that the slave masters were just these brutal brutes, that's a media distortion, There were a few bad apples, but for the most part, the slave owners actually treated the slaves like family, like an extended family, You go ahead and read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. You go read any of the slave narratives. There are lots of descriptions and depictions that the slaves gave for the slave masters, but extended family wasn't one of them. And that goes triple for Harriet Tubman. This is a woman who ran around with a shotgun because she was ready to pop a cap in these slave masters. But instead, Cassie Lemons and Deborah Chase, I already exposed Deborah Chase in my video about Cynthia Erivo and Gina Yashir. Deborah Chase was one of the producers on this crap. And it's no accident that they make sure when it's time to smear and time to pervert the memory and the legacy and the history of Harriet Tubman, they bring out some Negro bedwenches to do it. They make sure of that. That way they can point and say, well, you can't blame these white media executives. Why, there are black women here who produced it, some black women who directed it. Yeah, but all that matters is the white supremacist males who bankrolled it. Yeah, but that part gets left out. We don't talk about that. Family, for those of you who might have thought, well, is it really that serious? Yes, it is just that serious. The white supremacists have got to receive maximum resistance from us. We have got to be on a full offensive when this crap happens, because it ain't going to stop here. I told you that institutions are the guardians of ideas, and they're the guardians of ideals. Look at the phony baloney so-called civil rights organizations. Look at these fake, fraudulent so-called reparations groups who the only thing that they ever do is sit around talking about, I was at the NAACP winter luncheon and then the Urban League spring luncheon, and we had a resolution at the SNCC summer luncheon, and then this winter we're planning another resolution at the National Action Network's winter luncheon. That's all these clowns are. They're a social group and not a very good one. But that's what these clowns are. You got these professional do-nothing organizations, and you haven't heard a peep from them on this, have you? You haven't heard anything from them. You want to know why? It's because they're social clubs. They are aspiring to be white social clubs. They want acceptance from white media companies, from white politicians, and white corporations. and they will co-sign any racism, or they will just be silent in the face of any racism, so long as they can think they can get a check or an invitation to a white-hosted party. This is the reason why I call these civil rights so-called organizations nothing but civil rights fossils. They are part of white supremacy's controlled opposition. And you know that they're controlled opposition because when you tell them, hey, it's time to go on the warpath against this white supremacist attack, they don't even return your phone calls. They got nothing to say. Now, they will be sure to go on Joy Reid's show. They will be sure to go on Don Lemonade's show. They will be sure to go on the Breakfast Schlubs. They will be on Tom Joyner. They are not about, though, to deal with us. And that's how you draw the line between those who are real and those who are phony. That's the question that I got for black folks. Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line, black folks? Now, damn it, enough is enough. We got to draw the line somewhere, and that line's got to be big and black. Where do we as a people draw the line? Because white supremacy's already shown you that they're going to come at us, claws bared, fangs open, fur flying. They're going to be coming at us with everything they got. You see Agent DuVernay, and she's here pimping this movie, and she's not asking any questions about it. She sees the online opposition to it, but as far as she's concerned, well, those online opponents are just black folks who are getting in the way of her hustle. She takes pictures with trash like Lee Daniels and Tyler Perry, and occasionally Spike Lee. Now, I know that Spike is all over the place, and I made my peace with that a long time ago. I won't say that Spike Lee is on the side of the enemy per se, but the problem with Spike Lee is he's damn schizophrenic. He's schizophrenic on the issues. Half the time he makes sense, the other half the time he talks like a goddamn fool. So that's why you don't see me that's why you don't see me fooling with him. You don't see me quoting him. Sorry, but the guy's all over the place, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to need something resembling stability before I decide to rock with you. So I got to wash my hands of Spike Lee. Just a fact. And if he's just doing this because it's part of the game, I got to ask, have you won the game yet, Spike? You're damn near in your 70s. I mean, Spike Lee's over 60 years old, for God's sake. I'm glad that Spike Lee occasionally will take a stand at an awards ceremony, but the thing about it is, I judge you by the company you keep. So where do you draw the line, Spike? This was an attack on us using Harriet Tubman as a proxy. It was an attempt to smear one of our icons because she is one of our icons. And this is not the first time they've tried it. They tried this exact same ploy years ago with a made-for-television movie about Sally Hemings. Even then, they were trying to present the story of Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson as being some sort of forbidden love story. Yeah, it was forbidden, all right, because Thomas Jefferson wrote laws to make it so. Thomas Jefferson raped Sally Hemings for 3 decades. This guy was an animal. This was not a man, this was a demon. He sold at least one that we know of, because he had a number of children by Sally Hemings, but he sold at least one of those children at a slave auction. This is a child that he himself produced. The first thing he said was, let's sell this child at a slave auction. Can you think of a more satanic act than that for any person who sires a child to do? And yet you got white folks, white liberals, who will try to tell you Thomas Jefferson wasn't as bad as all that. He was very complex, you know. He was a man of his time. Yeah, he was a man of his time who was well acquainted with the Bible. Nobody who claims to be acquainted with the Bible can say in one breath that the children of Israel were done wrong, and then in the next breath say, but what we're doing to black folks, that ain't so bad. No, there has always been a very deeply ingrained tradition of hypocrisy, doublespeak, and two-facedness when it comes to European culture. That's the problem. The European can say one thing on Monday, he can say the exact opposite thing on Tuesday, and then say the same thing he was saying Monday on Wednesday, and not feel a pang of remorse or even a twinge of regret. whatever he thinks is going to serve his power interest in the moment. And I've told you that that's basically the only actual values or principles that white supremacy has: situational ethics and moral relativism. Those are the only two values white supremacy's got. Whatever serves their power interest, they'll gladly make fools of themselves. That's part of the reason why whenever you corner the white supremacists on their rhetoric, whenever you actually nail them down, then what happens is they start talking foolishly because they would much rather look like a fool than reveal the fact that they're lying. They would much rather be thought of as stupid than be revealed, than to have to actually admit to their lies. That's part of their MO. And this crap that Cassie Lemons and Deborah Chase and Agent Duvernay and Cynthia Erivo are trying to peddle, this is the most shameless attempt to smear one of our ancestors since that white supremacist hate tract, The Confessions of Nat Turner. For those of you who don't know, that was some garbage put together by a homosexual who was trying to posit the idea that Nat Turner apparently was lusting after white women, etc., etc. When Nate Parker made a movie about a slave turned freedom fighter, the white media dragged him. They were like, we got to destroy this guy. Yeah, they didn't have much stomach for slave movies when you do a slave movie right. Oh, but if you want to make 12 Years a Slave, there's got to be that white savior. And that shows you how important that lie is to them. How important it is. We got to promote that lie. There has to be a white savior. And if you don't put a white savior, that you got to water it down. You can't make it clear who the good guys and the bad guys are. You cannot make it clear that the slaves were fighting for freedom and that they had no allies. They had no help. You can't tell the truth. What you got to show is that basically the black folks were just bystanders in their own story. It was the white saviors who were important. It's the white man's story is what's important. Nate Parker wasn't doing that. Well, we got to destroy this movie then, and we got to destroy him too. We're going to make an example out of him. You go calling yourself violating the white media's racist narrative template, and this is what's going to happen to you. So you got these clowns who come along with this Harriet crap, selling a racist, satanic lie and doing it with a smile on their faces. Nah, nobody's trying to dredge up any dirt on Cassie Lemons or Cynthia Erivo. The white media is acting like the firestorm against her. Forget about a tree that fell in the forest. This is an entire forest that fell. And the white media is pretending like we didn't see it. Some of those trees fell on the white media. They're like, oh, that didn't hurt. Let's get the hell out of here. Because this is a message that the white media wants out there. The idea is to condition the public through these media lies that in slavery, the white supremacists were not the perpetrators of slavery. Why, the white supremacists, these slave owners, they were innocent bystanders. Why, they were just good, hard-working white folks trying to give these Negroes some gainful employment. And well, if there was any brutality going on, it was black people black people were just as much responsible for the horrors of slavery as any white slave owner. In fact, black people were actually more to blame. Black people were actually more to blame. Why, don't you know that the white folks who showed up in Africa, they weren't even looking for slaves? What happened was King Babungo showed up and said, you will take these people as slaves or we will kill you. You got any ships? That's what was going on. That's the way the white supremacy tries to tell the slavery story. Why, you had these African chiefs who showed up and they had these good white Christians at spear point and said, we'll kill you unless you start taking slaves. And once they got over here in the New World, while the black folks said, God dang it, if you white people refuse to hold on to these slaves, I will go get them ourselves. If massa, if you ain't gonna go get these slaves and give me a gun, I'll go get these slaves myself. Yeah, Cleophas and the rest of the guys on the plantation, they were just so hot and bothered to hold up the institution of white supremacy. They were just so interested. They just would do anything to maintain slavery. See, the good white folks were sitting on the porch, sipping mint juleps, shaking their heads and going, man, these Negroes are out of control. Why? How are we going to get our plantations back? You got these black folks who were just running hog wild, capturing slaves and just, man, we're just prisoners of these Negroes who are bringing us tons of money, picking our cotton, by the way. That's the satanic narrative that the white media is trying to invent. They're trying to invent a narrative that the white supremacists were just these innocent, meek, kind-hearted, freedom-loving, hail fellow well-met, wouldn't hurt a flea. Why, they were the most square-dealing, honorable people you ever met. They were just caught up in an institution far beyond their control, never mind the fact that they were the ones running it. And they waged the first civil war in the country's history to maintain it, and even assassinated a president and tried to decapitate the government by killing Abraham Lincoln's cabinet. That's part of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln that doesn't get talked about. They went after Abraham Lincoln's entire cabinet the night that they murdered him. They shot, stabbed, and got a number of cabinet members. The only difference is Abraham Lincoln was the one who died. I believe that the others who were attacked survived the attempts on their lives. But the thing is, that's part of the history that gets left out. They don't tell you that the white supremacists actually went after Abraham Lincoln's entire government. Even after the Civil War was over, they were still trying to decapitate the government. That part gets left out, conveniently. But you see, these guys were not the problem. The problem was these black people. That's the message that they're trying to get across. Why, these Negroes, they need white people to protect them, because otherwise these black men would be killing the black women, and that's the important thing to get across. Yeah, we're going to make sure that you need Harriet Tubman, this strong black woman who's so heroic, this black woman who nothing was able, she was indomitable, but at the end, she still needed a white man to save her because, well, and not just any white man. It couldn't be some white man with some nerdy abolitionist who she has to teach some courage to put a spine into a spineless white liberal. That's not what happens. Instead, she has to be saved by a slave master. And it was an allegedly black woman who wrote this garbage, and apparently some panty-waist black male, allegedly, who co-wrote this crap, and an allegedly black woman, Deborah Chase, who produced it. And that tells you everything you need to know about black celebrities in Hollywood. That tells you everything you need to know about these Negroes in the white media. White power is engaged in a holy war, or rather an unholy war, to control the public mind, and there's a bunch of black bootlicks trying to help them do it. I told you that all this crap was going to be coming in a flood, that the white media was going to try to flood the zone with these lying images and these fraudulent narratives. So far, we've been calling this stuff out, but we got to be prepared to step up our efforts. Family, it is not a victimless crime whenever you know that there's going to be Cynthia Erivo at the University of Texas in Austin, and you don't do everything you can to get in there and call her out. The next important step that black empowerment is going to have to take is going to be offline, not online. We're going to have to demonstrate that we can indeed invade physical space. We have got to be disruptors. We have got to show that we're going to be shutting this stuff down. When Jamie and Fowler ran up on Elizabeth Warren, you better believe that Kamala Harris and all the rest of those clowns saw that and said, "We tell our Secret Service detail, look out for this guy." That's the kind of courage we got to start showing. You had that brother Chad Boogie, and you can see the video of that on my Twitter page. He called out Cynthia Erivo when she was live on stage. Well, Black Empowerment was live in the audience too, and called her out and let her know, you have disrespected us and we're here to crash the freaking party. And you better believe she was shook after that. Yeah, she understood that, just because you go to this white comedy club, don't think that you're going to be doing some sort of stand-up routine and Black Empowerment won't be there to give you thumbs down, and don't think you ain't going to hear about it either. Yeah, that brother put her on Front Street, but the thing about it is we got to do more than that, and it has to happen more often. Look, either you're serious about it or you're not. If you're not serious, go ahead and say, well, it ain't that serious, Professor Truth. Just go ahead and say it. and I'll show you the door. It is just that serious. It is just that serious and more. This is raping our history going on here. This is historical rape happening here. Harriet Tubman's memory is being desecrated and violated. And as long as you decide that there's not anything you can do or even say about it, if you decide that there was anything that you could do but you just ain't, that you had an opportunity to confront these bastards and, well, you just couldn't do it, then you are taking part in it. The next step in all this is to become disruptors. As long as they're out here putting out these lies, we got to show that we're going to bums rush them. We're going to crash the party and tell the truth. What Cassie Lemons and Cynthia Erivo have done is satanic. To take the story of Harriet Tubman and pervert it into some sort of twisted swirler fantasy. That's beyond sick. To take a black woman who devoted her life to fighting white supremacists, who devoted her life to threatening slave owners, and then make it where she has to be rescued by a slave owner. And not just any slave owner, but the one who had been brutalizing her. That is so perverted, I don't even have the words for it. To take some evil, twisted, just demonic slave owner and portray him as being decent, while you take the only representation of a black man in the movie and you turn him into a murderous brute. Oh, the black man is just so well, you see, it's that whole black on black crime thing, you know, because the white slave owner, you see, he wasn't trying to kill Harriet. He was just trying to gently hold her hand while the two make goo-goo eyes at each other, and they're going to have a nice, pleasant stroll back to the cotton fields. It's that black man. He didn't care about anything. He just wanted to have her dead. You see, those Negroes, that black on black crime thing, you know, that's the message that they were trying to get across. You got some black folks like this Cassie Lemons woman. They are every bit as anti-black as the worst Caucasian white supremacists you can think of. They are every bit as anti-black as a Jared Taylor, every bit as anti-black as any Hollywood executive you can name. And these are the people trying to tell you, you need to go see this movie. Oh, this is going to be just this is going to honor Harriet Tubman. This is going to be the story you've been waiting for. No, it was not. This movie is meant to be a certification of the goodness of white zaddy. That's what this is really about. Cassie Lemons has a zaddy fetish, and she ain't the only one. Reminds me of what these swirlers were saying after the Mother Emanuel Church massacre. Even after Dylan Roof went into a church and slaughtered nearly a dozen black women, you immediately the next day had swirlers online saying, well, that shouldn't make you think twice about hopping into bed with whatever white supremacist will sleep with you. Oh, don't let that put a damper on your zaddy love. Okay, sure. So this is just the latest in a seemingly endless string of incidents where some white supremacist brutalizes or kills black women. And, well, you just roll the dice. It's worth rolling the dice. Why? The chance to be the pet negress for some white supremacist, that's just such a good opportunity. You should be willing to risk your life for it. That's what these swirlers are about. That's how twisted their mentality is. They're willing to die for their zaddy fetish. Are you willing to die for their zaddy fetish? Are you willing to give your life just so that some swirlers can feel as if there's some white supremacist who's willing to sleep with them? What Cassie Lemons put out there, this is absolutely evil. You would think that D.W. Griffith produced this, or David Duke. You represent the slave owners as being decent. Oh, sure, these guys, they are a little rough around the edges, and they do say some off-the-wall stuff. And, well, from time to time, they do like to put hands on you, but, at the end of the day, they're not trying to kill you. I mean, they do have some lines they won't cross. They've got some measure of restraint. Now, that black man, on the other hand, oh, God, what a brute he is, what a beast he is. Somebody needs to stop him. The biggest threat you've got is not these white supremacists brutalizing you. It's this black man over here. He's the real threat. This garbage was written and directed by pure trash. And the only thing that they saw in Harriet Tubman was just a cheap opportunity to demonize black men and to zaddy worship white supremacists and to use one of our icons, one of our most beloved ancestors, a woman who was the living embodiment of black empowerment. She was going to have her freedom by any means. And if you had these Negroes out here like, I ain't sure about this empowerment thing, she was going to drag her people into freedom, whether they wanted to go or not. I could not praise Harriet Tubman anymore, and I could not denounce Cynthia Erivo, Cassie Lemons, and Deborah Chase, and Agent DuVernay. I will not denounce them any less. Harriet Tubman deserves all of our praise, all of our honor. And these bootlicks, these swirler degenerates, who are turning her into nothing more than a cheap foil for their zaddy fetish, we got to call them out on it. This is the kind of evil that should follow everyone associated with this crap for the rest of their lives. They should not be able to go anywhere and escape this. What they have done is to commit an eternal sin against us. Anyone whose ancestry goes back to those plantations, look, when it comes to the definition of whether it's foundational black or ADOS or whatever the word you want to call it, it's all just different names for the exact same thing. Those of us whose ancestry goes back to the plantations in the United States, to the killing fields of the American South. All of us, yeah, sure, we should have standards for what qualifies you to be one of us. But you know what? Like any group who's actually serious about their power, we should also have some sort of standards for what would disqualify you. Okay, yeah, you may have the bloodline, but the problem is you've done too many things that makes it where now, we got to have a means of saying, there are some folk who need to be excluded. Well, on paper, I don't know about on paper, but in the real world, they've been doing some foul stuff. Every organization and group should have standards for what qualifies you to be in it, but they should also have standards for what qualifies you to be excluded from it. What makes it where you're disqualified to be part of that group. And somebody like a Deborah Chase or an Agent DuVernay, man, we should be not giving them any kind of shorts, man. We should not be giving them any kind of slack. When they do something like this, you have crossed a line. And the line that you've crossed is the line between good and evil. And as Kwame Ture said, decent people, moral people do not choose evil. This so-called movie was nothing more than a thinly veiled attempt to rewrite our history. It's an attempt to take a black woman who was violently opposed to white supremacy and to turn her into a bedwench. You take Harriet Tubman, the quintessential black freedom fighter, the woman who was, whenever people think about a slave in the United States who took up arms against the slave owners, there's usually Harriet Tubman's name that comes out of their mouths first, and with good reason. She had a fearsome reputation for taking the war to the white supremacists, and to take this woman who was just the most well-known symbol known around the world. This is a woman who took up arms against white supremacy, and she multiple times went back into the South. This woman made it clear, I'll march back into the lion's den every freaking chance I get. I'll stomp all over your plantations every chance I get, and you better not close your eyes, because that might be the time when I come and get you. This was a woman who had those slave masters shook, because you never knew when the freedom train was going to come crashing through your plantation. You never knew when Harriet Tubman was going to drive the freedom train through your spot. But to take this woman who meant so much and did so much and who was just a pure symbol of black resistance to white supremacy, a woman who was the living embodiment of fighting white supremacy, and to instead turn her into basically the plaything for a white supremacist. And to make it where, well, basically, if only it hadn't been for the times they lived in. And that's when you sit here and take a slave master and make him sympathetic and try to make it where, well, we want to humanize this monster. Well, what about the black man who's enslaved? Well, there's no humanity in him, you know. And you take Harriet Tubman and try to make her into a historical handmaiden of white supremacy. You try to make her into an accomplice to slavery. You try to make her into some sort of foil that you can use to give sympathy to and humanize a slave master. How dare you? How dare you? And if they're willing, if they got the nerve, the gall to do this to Harriet Tubman, then how long before someone decides, hey, maybe we need to go ahead and take a chance and try to make that film saying that Malcolm X was bisexual? Because you know that's what this is really about. They know that they're telling lies. But what they also know is that so far, well, the movie theaters, they're not seeing that they've really been punished for it. No other group allows this kind of garbage to go down without there being severe consequences for this. Nobody's lost their jobs. Nobody has really been punished. And that being the case, as far as they're concerned, they feel like, okay, the movie's going to flop, but, you know, we got tons of money, and hell, how much money did this thing cost? A few $1 million? Pfft, we make that on our lunch break. That's how the movie industry is looking. As far as they're concerned, the point is not to make money. The point is about social control, to shape the society, societal manipulation through the use of lying, fraudulent, false images and counterfeit narratives. That's what this is really about. I told you about that with Egypt, black and proud. Whenever you look at the walls of ancient Kemet, you see nothing but black folks with afros. But what white power did was they started making drawings and paintings and later on films and movies showing nothing but white folks. I showed you what was actually on the walls in Kemet. And then I showed you what white power decided to manufacture. They were manufacturing their own image library. And now you got folks who think that the ancient Kemetans were blonde-haired and blue-eyed. Why? Well, Charlton Heston, he played an Egyptian. Yeah, but the thing is, he wasn't one. He just got cast as one, and that was crap. Well, Christian Bale is a white man from England. Get off it. But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to invent an image library that shows Harriet Tubman. She understood her slave master. She knew that massa wasn't so bad. Harriet Tubman, she knew that slavery wasn't so bad. And she knew that the black man was the real enemy. She knew that. So yeah, as far as they're concerned, this is just the first attempt. Paul Greengrass, he was the director of those Jason Bourne movies. I told you about how he was trying to make a movie about Martin Luther King, but he demanded, in fact, the entire crux of what his movie was going to be was, well, we need to talk about Martin Luther King being an adulterer. That's what he was trying to do. He didn't really care about anything else because what happened was when the King family stepped to him and told him, Dr. King, all of his speeches and his images and such, you do know that those are copyrighted and you can't use any of them without our permission. And we don't give you permission because we know what you're trying to do. So what did Paul Greengrass do? Did he say, you know what? Long as I can tell the story of Dr. King, we don't need any phony baloney frauds and just fakery about adultery. Besides, how important is that anyway? No, he said, if I can't put any adultery stuff in there, then I'm walking away altogether. So that lets you know what Paul Greengrass was all about. It was going to be a thinly veiled smear piece against Dr. King. That's what he intended to do. You see, they failed to smear Dr. King this time. Now they're going after Harriet Tubman. And before long, it will be someone else. This is what white supremacy is doing because they see the moves, they see what's been going on for the last 10 plus years. How the new voices of black media have been gaining steam and how we have now reached a critical tipping point It is no accident that this is happening now. I told you and continue to tell you, nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy. When they pull something like this, what they're letting you know is they feel as if now they've got to, once we start talking about ancestry, going back to the plantations, well, now white supremacy through the white media is attempting to try to define what our ancestors were and are. They're trying to define what constituted our ancestors. Well, if you're talking about the plantations, we're going to miseducate people about what happened during slavery. You guys are talking all of this reparations stuff. Well, we're going to try to take the edge off of that. We're going to present slavery as not so bad. They know exactly what it is that they're attempting to do. They know precisely the lies that they're trying to promote. And they know who it's aimed at. So get ready to see Hollywood really try to promote and push some slavery movies. And also expect to have the same handful of fakers, frauds, phonies, all of these agents and suck-ups. Agent DuVernay is going to be out there. She won't be having anything complimentary or supportive to say about the black media. That she will not do. Oh, but you better believe that when Cassie Lemons, or when Channing Dungey, or when Tyler Perry or Lee Daniels or any of these clowns, whenever Cynthia Erivo decides she wants to play Aretha Franklin, you better believe that Agent DuVernay will be there to say, oh, how wonderful. And all you people online who have a problem with that, you guys are just a bunch of white supremacists. You guys don't matter. You know, the folks who actually thought well of Agent DuVernay, you guys are going to learn, well, maybe. I shouldn't hold a candle up for that one. But some of you are going to realize too late that you got fooled. And I can't ride with folks who are this slow on the uptake, this far along in the process. At this late date, you still don't understand that when I call this heifer out, it's for a reason. All she's got to do is a documentary about the Central Park Five, and you go, maybe she ain't so bad. You know, it's more complex than that. Some of you fools actually tried saying that garbage. Well, you know, you kind of oversimplified Agent DuVernay. You know who you sound like? You sound like the white supremacist trying to defend the slave owners. Well, you know, you've oversimplified Thomas Jefferson, you know. And, well, you know, some of the slave owners may have been brutal, but as an institution, you've oversimplified it, you know. It was more complex than that, you know. Just goes to show that the times may change, but the lies and the liars remain the same. Family, we got to make sure we remember who our enemies are. And we must also remember the crimes and the sins that they've committed against us. You see, you couldn't have anybody calling themselves making a movie, a high-profile movie that tells the truth about O.J. Simpson and what really happened 25 years ago. White media is not about to promote that. You had that documentary debunking that Leaving Neverland pack of lies. The white media wasn't very interested in that. By the way, they're still out there promoting and giving awards to Leaving Neverland as if nothing had happened. Because the white supremacist males who run the white media, these big executives, they understand that they're just using Michael Jackson as a distraction. Let's talk about him, and as long as we're talking about Michael Jackson, we're not talking about Harvey Weinstein. We're not talking about Les Moonves. We're not talking about Matt Lauer. You had Rowan Farrow, the guy who allegedly broke the whole Me Too thing. He brought about all this, and he has his book out there, Catch and Kill. But if he was actually looking to inform the public, he might have a better name for the book, Catch and Release, because that's what's happened to all of these white supremacist males who have been engaging in all of this sexual predatory behavior. Kevin Spacey has been sprung clear. They're letting him go. Les Moonves, there's no charges being brought against him whatsoever. And Matt Lauer, he's been accused of rape. Sodomy, no less. Well, not bringing any charges against him either. What about Harvey Weinstein? Cy Vance, for the second time, is quietly dismissing the charges against Harvey Weinstein. Not even at trial. Ain't he supposed to be on trial yet? They had Bill Cosby charged, on trial, and in prison in the time that it's taken them just merely to figure out, do we even want to try Harvey Weinstein? It's been 2 freaking years since the story broke on Harvey Weinstein. What does that tell you? Oh, and by the way, you can't help but notice how we got Cassie Lemons and Agent Duvernay. They don't seem to be very bothered by that. Oh, there's Agent Duvernay is so concerned about black men getting railroaded. Well, as long as it's black men who it's not going to lead to any white supremacists getting caught out, no white supremacists will get punished. Don't tell me that some washed up, wrinkled up former prosecutor lost her job at Columbia. The white supremacists don't get fired. They just get transferred. Don't tell me that Linda Fairstein lost her publishing gig. She never should have had one in the first place. When's Linda Fairstein going to lose her law license? When's she going to be brought up on charges for prosecutorial misconduct? When the hell is she going to be doing some prison time? Riddle me that. No, family, we got to step up our efforts. White supremacy is going to be hitting the gas when it comes to demonizing our icons because this is part of the ongoing propaganda offensive against us. We are placing an emphasis on the plantations and what happened there, and the white media is attempting to try to rewrite the history books and put a rosy gloss on it. Oh, we're going to put it. The plantations weren't really that bad at all, and the slave owners were certainly not that bad. And well, it's really much ado about nothing when you think about it. And sure, Harriet Tubman was trying to get away from the plantations, but that's just because she didn't understand massa. And look who's helping white supremacy to sell the soap. No, family, this is completely and thoroughly unacceptable at all. And our anger over this, our righteous rage, must be abiding, and it also must be unceasing. What they have done is to commit an eternal sin, and we have to make sure that they are reminded, you will never, ever be allowed to forget that you did this. Cynthia Erivo should not be able to go do some comedy show without hearing about this. They should know that, oh, you guys are still on our backs. Damn right, we're going to stay on your backs about it. Wherever you go, whatever you try to do in the future, Cynthia Erivo, or anybody else for that matter, you will be punished. And just for the record, earlier I think I might have said that brother Chad Boogie step to Cynthia Erivo was actually Gina Yashere. But the truth of the matter is, when it comes to these freaking bootlicks and bedwenches and buffoons, they're all interchangeable. If you step into one of them, you're stepping to them all, because you better believe that Cassie Lemons, she got her panties in a twist when she saw that. And the same thing goes for Deborah Chase and Agent Duvernay. When they saw that brother speak up and step to Gina Yashere, then they looked and said, man, this could be a problem for all of us. We're going to be holding these screenings, and we better be a lot more careful about who we let into these screenings in the audience. We better be a lot more careful about it. We got to make sure that we invade their space and get in their grill about it. They need to know that wherever they go, the righteous forces of black empowerment are going to be there to disrupt them. Get your freaking cell phone cameras. Be sure to hold them sideways. And you make sure that wherever these clowns are, when they decide that they're going to come to a venue near you, you make sure that black empowerment is in the room. You make sure that wherever they go, they understand, nah, you're not going to be finding some convenient, safe space where you don't have to hear the ugly truth about what you've done. Wherever you go, it's going to be something else. We're going to make sure that you hear about this. We have got to take the initiative and hold the initiative. It is not enough merely to win some battles. We must win the war. We must subject white supremacy and its operatives to a daily breaking process. Every day, Cynthia Erivo must be broken all over again. Every day, Cassie Lemons must be broken all over again. Every day, Agent Duvernay must be broken all over again. This is what we must do. And that's part of the reason why we got to get our economy in order. Because to do that means you're going to be making a full-time job out of it. Well, a full-time job requires full-time resources. But we must also have full-time will to do this holy work. All of white supremacy and their operatives have to be put on notice personally by us. As long as the white supremacists, the white media, and their black bootlicks decide that they're going to keep telling lies about our ancestors, then we are going to be there to tell the truth about the white supremacists and their black bootlicks.